Uh, and before we dive into the meeting and the agenda of today's meeting, I wanted to address one question that I have received from many of you, and that is, okay, why did you guys decide to develop this Preply methodology? And the reason for that is twofold. The first is actually many of our tutors tell us that they're spending countless number of hours for preparing for their classes, finding materials, preparing for classes, and so on. And then the second reason is when we ask you guys, what is one aspect of teaching that you really like the least? You mentioned one of the main reasons was you really did not like preparing for meeting, and you feel like you're wasting a lot of time preparing for the classes and looking for materials. So we decided to make it easier for you to really concentrate on what you love doing, which is teaching and helping students progress. And we decided to develop together with both Chris's, who are as cool, I promise, decided to develop a methodology to really equip you with all different materials for you to be successful tutor and to help your students progress with their learning journey. So hopefully I was able to answer your question that a lot of you have asked me in the past and wanted to address it to as many tutors as possible at once. And now we are going to dive into today's webinar. So quick agenda here before I pass it to both Chris's. We will use this teaching guide that you see right now, and which almost all of you have, to actually shape the conversation today. We will start the conversation with a quick overview of how actually to set up your profile on the learning platform in order to be all set to have a good class. Second part will be about how to send a placement test. I know some of you are already doing that, but just to make sure that we cover the basics, we will walk you through that. The third part will be on how to actually conduct the first lesson using the learning program. And we will actually finish the conversation with how to send a homework and engage the student further. Of course, the last 10 minutes we'll try to keep for questions and answers. So please take your questions. Again, remember them. We will cover them in the last couple of minutes. And please make sure if you don't speak, you are on mute so we can have a background free noise and can enjoy the webinar.
Fantastic.
Cool. Okay. Chris, I think we all see you.
Yes, that's great. So usually how it works is that the active speaker, the camera will come. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. But yeah, so my name is Chris Jagazia. Many of you know me from answering some of your support queries over at the Preply methodology tool. We've got Chris Rush as well. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to do Elisa's first item on the agenda. We're going to give you a walkthrough of exactly how things look from both perspectives, from the teacher and the student perspective. And we're really going to follow the document, the PDF document that you all have called the Preply methodology. And we hope that this gives you a good idea of both sides of the equation. So what you see and what your student sees. So Chris Rush is going to pretend to be the teacher, you, the tutor, and I'm actually going to pretend to be the student. And we're going to walk you through right now. So I'll give it over to Chris Rush, and Chris can unmute and share his screen, and we'll go from there.
Oh. Okay, fantastic. Nice to see everyone here. Yeah, if you guys have seen the videos, then you'll recognize my face. So what we're gonna do now, like Chris said, is we're just gonna kind of walk you through start to finish. We'll take your questions. We just wanna make sure you are as equipped and as confident as possible to use the tool, because really this is gonna benefit you, right? If you use this tool and you use it well, it's gonna allow you to spend less time preparing for your lessons, and that's gonna allow you to spend more time focusing on your students. You're gonna be able to do more students with the same amount of effort. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to lead to more money in your pocket. So we've set this up. This was originally built for people who are just like you, online tutors, to expand what they're doing without spending all of their time planning lessons. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk you through what it looks like start to finish, is assuming that you've never used it before. So the very first step, like it says on the sheets that we've prepared, is you get started with a Zoom account. You have a free Zoom account. All of you, I guess all of you have that, right? If you're here, that part. So you have a free Zoom account and you link it to your off to class profile. So that's the very first thing I'm gonna show you. Literally, even for someone who starts out without a Zoom account, it takes 90 seconds between creating the Zoom account and then integrating it to your Preply methodology tool. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so I actually recorded myself doing this to show just how fast it was. So once you, and I'm gonna skip that, once you activate your Zoom account, we're gonna show you how to integrate it to your Preply tool. So this is me setting up my Zoom account. And then as soon as the Zoom account is set up, I get my personal meeting ID. So the moment I set up a Zoom account, I get my personal meeting ID. That's the link. I actually don't have to do anything else. I don't have to configure any settings. I don't have to schedule any meetings. The moment my Zoom account is active, all I have to do is then go to the Preply methodology tool, and on the top right of the screen, I click on profile, and then the first sub menu is also profile. So I click on that, and then I'm gonna see there, I have a few different tabs here. The top, the profile that it starts with on the left, that's the one I need. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll down, and this is where I wanna be in video conference link. I already have a Zoom link there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this Zoom link that I was just given when I set up my free Zoom account, and I'm just gonna paste it right in. And the moment I paste it in, that is gonna be what links to my classroom. So then you have to click the green button at the bottom that says update profile, and then you're gonna get the confirmation at the top of the page that says profile update. So that is the only thing that you need to do to link your Zoom account with your Preply methodology tool, and it took about 1 minute to do. Once that is done, you are then ready to actually teach a student. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna switch my classroom view. I'm gonna turn to a different camera so you can see what it looks like to actually launch a meeting. I can't do that with a screen share because I'm in a Zoom meeting now, so you'll miss what it looks like to actually launch the meeting. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and what I'm going to do instead is I'm gonna switch my camera. So let's switch my camera. Okay, perfect. So now you see my computer screen. So there's my computer screen, and here I am at the Preply methodology homepage. So this is how you actually are going to enroll a student into a class. So we'll get into the placement test and how that works, but as far as the nuts and bolts of actually launching a class, this is how it works. You can choose any one of the lessons from the lesson library. So I'm gonna launch a day at the office, so I'm gonna click that. And then it's going to, you may not be able to see all the text, and that's okay. I'm gonna explain everything. I've got a drop down here where I can select my student. So I'm gonna select my student, and I'm gonna select Chris. And then I'm going to click the orange enroll button right here. So I've selected my student here, and now I'm enrolling my student. Once I click that enroll button, it's going to launch the classroom, and it's going to show me any notes that I've taken for this particular student. So for this student, I see, okay, he's a French Canadian, 40 years old, and I see his goals. Those are the things I've saved, so that anytime I launch a lesson with this student, anything I want to remind myself of is right there. So here I am in the classroom experience. I'm actually going to go ahead and enroll one more student.
Hey guys, can you please mute yourself? As I asked several times, please, everyone who is on and not speaking, please mute yourself. Thank you very much.
This is what it looks like from the teacher side. Now, on the bottom left, I have the classroom chat button. If I open the classroom chat button, I've got a big purple button that says start video. Because of the step that I just did in the last side by setting up my Zoom link, when I click this start video button, it's automatically going to open Zoom using the link that I pasted in. So I'm going to click this.
One thing, Chris, maybe before pressing start video, we could explain something.
Sure.
So basically, you're waiting for your student to show up to your lesson, right? And you're in the lesson that you want to teach that day. You're sitting, you're waiting, and the text at the top actually tells you that your student hasn't arrived yet. So let's just show you now. Let's flip to the student. So basically, you're going to have set up the student. We're going to go over that, but you're going to have set up the student on the system. You're going to have given that student an email and a password. That happens typically at the start when you assign the placement test. And there are email notifications built in that you can rely on. Like if you enroll your student into a lesson, they'll get a notification that your class has started. But one thing I wanted to mention on the email notifications is email notifications are fraught with some uncertainty. They can get caught by spam filters. It's always best when you're first bringing a student onto this system, just use the Preply messaging system and simply tell them that here's your login details, here's your email and your password, and at the time of our scheduled lesson, you're going to log in at the link, and the student sees, because you've enrolled the student in a lesson, I'm the student, I see a big button that says join lesson. No matter how you get the student to log in, whether it's an email notification, whether it's the calendar invite, whatever you're doing, the important point is that once they get here, once they actually get to this side of the platform, the student side of the platform, because my teacher, Chris, has enrolled me in a lesson, I've got a big button waiting for me that says join lesson. That's definitely something I wanted to highlight. It's been a good question that has come up, is that a lot of the tutors were saying, oh, you know, I've turned on email notifications and my student just wasn't getting the email notifications. It probably means the email notification was just hit by a spam filter. But I just wanted to clarify that whether the student is coming to join a lesson, whether the student is coming to take a placement test, whatever the action that is being taken on the methodology, when they log in, that's waiting for them here. So because Chris has enrolled me in a lesson, I've got a big join lesson button that's waiting for me. Now, I'm going to press it now. So I'm the student. I arrived at the lesson because Chris communicated to me through the Preply messaging system that I log in here at our agreed time. So I'm going to press join lesson. And now I'm in Chris's lesson. And you can see that right away, what happens is the chat pops up. And my side of the platform is quite simple. I don't see the teacher notes, no bells and whistles, nothing. I simply have the first slide of the lesson, because that's the lesson, that's the slide Chris is on, and the chat window. And Chris has already noticed that I'm in the lesson. The reason Chris noticed I'm in the lesson is because his chat window popped up and said, hey, your student's here. Your student's here, and you can start communicating. And so let's imagine this was the very first lesson I ever took with my tutor. I might not know that I need to press start video now. So I might say, the student might say to the teacher, like, hi, Chris. What do I do now? And you can now communicate with the student in a live kind of synchronous method using the chat. And Chris has already told me, oh, all I need to do is press the start video button. Okay, fantastic. So I can do that. Now, Chris, maybe you should go back to your side of the platform and just show kind of what you're seeing right now so that we can go back to the teacher side.
Yeah, absolutely. So on my side, and I wonder if it'll make more sense to do this with my sharing screen instead. It's because I know that that'll be a little bit easier for everyone to see.
Yeah, Chris, that would be great. And I think you guys explained really well everything. I just think before we move to the next point, I see that some people have questions on how to enroll the student. And I think that we already covered that you open the lesson, you include the credentials, you enroll the student, right? You enroll their email address as well as you create their password, and they receive that by email, or you send it to them by Preply's messaging platform. So I think that should be kind of clear. And we are, if you guys have any more questions, keep them going in chat, but please make sure you pay attention. I'll try to answer those questions by the chat.
Yeah, so what I'll do at this point is just kind of show you what the in-classroom experience is like for the teacher. So Chris has already showed you, you could see what the classroom looked like for him. And on his side, he doesn't have these teacher notes that are over here on the side. Those don't exist for him. For the teacher side, I've got a couple of things that he doesn't have that are gonna help me. So number one, I've got this pane of teacher notes. And this teacher note pane changes, right, as I move through the slides. So when I switch slides, those things change too, so I can always see what the most relevant thing is going to be for the student. I also have this navigation part down here. So in this navigation part, I have like a little timeline where if I hover over any spot of the timeline, I can jump to a specific part of the lesson. I can also just go one by one. If I want to pop back to the beginning, I can pop back using the double arrows, and now I'm all the way back at the beginning. I've also got these tools that are up at the top right. And these are tools that are going to allow me to interact with my student in real time. So I can use a text box. If anywhere on the screen, I can just write a text box, and I can change the color of the text. I can change the size. I can use a pen, and we'll show you what this is like from the teacher and the student perspective.
And Chris, before we continue, should we do the final step of let's both press start video?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
So Linda had a good question. She was like, but when do the teacher and the students get to see each other? So that's the final step when you're setting up your lesson. Students joined your class, right? You can tell the student has joined your class because you were notified in the classroom chat. You might have already been chatting with them. And now you tell the student to press start video. So Chris is going to press start video on that computer. I'm going to press start video from the student side so you can actually see us. It's a bit complicated right now because we're having the webinar in Zoom, and this is on Zoom, but we've got multiple devices out to try to simulate this as best as possible. So Chris is going to press start video on that computer. I'm going to press start video on my second computer.
So you can see on my computer screen, the Zoom tab has opened. It says your meeting is starting. So now Zoom is going to launch. And here, okay, so there it is. So there's Chris. So now I've got two things happening. Zoom has launched. I've got my classroom in this window. I've got Chris here. So I don't want to keep necessarily switching back and forth between my teaching material and my student. So if I want to just keep an eye on my student because I want to see if he's making some kind of face to indicate a lack of understanding, I'm just going to click the little minimize up at the top of the screen. So if I click the minimize up here, what it's going to do is Chris is now going to float. So I can see Chris at all times. And even when I operate on the slides, Chris is still floating there. So I'm always going to keep an eye on Chris. So I'm just going to tuck him over here in the corner. And so now this is where he and I can interact in real time. So Chris, it might make sense here if you share your screen, and that way we can get the dual perspective.
Great.
So Chris is sharing his screen. He's in the lesson. And what's going to happen in just a moment is automatically it's going to sync up to where I am. So I'm going to go back. And as I move through the slides move. Chris doesn't have any ability. to move the slides. So as I do things on the slide, I'm gonna click the pen and I'm gonna circle Sarah. And as I circle Sarah with my pen, Chris sees it automatically appear on his screen. If Chris, once I turn the pen on, then Chris has access to the pen too. So if Chris then draws something on the pen, like if he clicks on his screen, right? Then that's gonna, you can see over here, that is instantaneously and automatically appeared on my screen. So this makes it a really interesting way to teach the lesson. A couple things we can do. Let's say Chris doesn't know what this word means, lawyers. Okay, well, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if I right click on this word, I get a contextual menu. I can hear the audio, I can Google translate it to other languages, see the dictionary. My favorite thing is to click on image search. So if I click image search, it's gonna open a new tab and show lawyers. Now that doesn't show on Chris's screen, but Chris gets a notification in his chat box that says click here to see images of lawyers.
Oh, I think, Chris, I think we're sharing my screen. So they got to see that the lawyers link that you created came to my chat, to my classroom chat.
Yeah, so this part's a little tricky, right? My camera is showing the teacher perspective and the screen share is showing your perspective.
Okay, that's good. We got both. So yeah, so Chris showed you that you can right click on any word and that one of the menu items is to run a Google image search. I could stop sharing for a second so that we get more of your screen. So we're now back to Chris's side. So Chris is the teacher. And what he just showed you, which may have been a bit small, is that he can actually right click on any word. So one of the ways to make this more interactive, let's go to a slide with more words on it, Chris.
Okay, here, let's do it this way. Right, so if we do it this way, it's a little bit easier so that everyone can see a little bit better.
Yeah.
So here, let's take the word cat. I can right click on the word cat. Here it said, Google Translate image search dictionary. Someone asked a question about inappropriate things. The image search always pops with save search on. So you don't have to worry that you're going to get anything inappropriate because the save search filter from Google, you can see up here, the save search is on. So it's the Google image filter is on to make sure that there's nothing inappropriate.
It's great. And then on my side, if I share now, we'll just show you just briefly, because we've got both of us here, that this is fully real-time interactive, right? Now we're back to the student side, and any action you take is automatically pushed to the student side. Whether that's changing a slide, whether that's using the pen, whether that's running that right-click menu and sending me a link for what a cat looks like. Obviously, most of your students are going to know what a cat looks like. But yeah, and then so we really wanted to just kind of show you in real time the synchronicity. Sorry, that's tongue twister for me. The synchronousness of the platform, and that it's really teacher-led. So anything you do on the teacher side is going to be pushed to the student side. And the pen, the right clicking, these are all ways that you can add dimensions to your lessons and keep things interesting, especially for long-time students that want a bit of dynamism in the lessons. So perhaps we should go back to Chris.
Yeah.
One thing I think we may have rushed over at the start is the idea of the lesson library. Perhaps you can share your screen just at the lesson library. So we're going to go over the placement test and what that's all about. And
and Chris, sorry to interrupt you, but while we were on the lesson, this was super interesting, you guys. You showed us some really cool techniques, and I know that people are already interested in starting to use this. A couple of more things probably you can share here also that I love is the canvas, where they can kind of customize the lesson if they want to, if they already know the student and know what they like, probably add some different exercises, so how they can use the canvas. And
Absolutely.
then how they can also use the homework, which is super important part. And believe it or not, students actually tend to retain better and to continue classes better if they receive homework. That's what our research shows. So these two things, I think, will be well appreciated by a lot of our tutors, and they would really enjoy to learn more about the Canvas and the homework and how to use them best. And then we can switch to the placement test.
Okay, great. So everyone can still see my screen, it looks like. So when I go to the beginning of this lesson, this is the lesson of a day at the office. Every single lesson has the Canvas attached. So I'm going to open the Canvas in just a moment. So every lesson has its own Canvas. And the Canvas is an unlimited whiteboard where you can add additional materials other than just what is provided. So up here at the top of the screen, I can see here I've got Canvas and homework. So if I click on that Canvas, it's gonna take me to this unlimited whiteboard. So once I open this, you can see it's already got stuff here. And the reason it's already got stuff here is because everything that I put on the Canvas stays there forever unless I delete it. So I have a text box here. This text box is actually here. I used this with a real student. A real student was going on a trip to Japan, and she wanted to know, how can I improve my interactions with Japanese people, because she was French. So we found an article about things that are culturally relevant for the Japanese, and I put some text on here and gave her some words to define. Now you can see as I move this stuff around, it moves around wherever I want. So it's a whiteboard, I can draw. I've got these tools, and I can scroll in any direction I want, and I can scroll forever, right? There's no size limitation to this thing. The other thing I can do, I can put YouTube videos on this. So if I can actually paste a YouTube link onto my Canvas, and my student can see this. So for homework, my student can actually click play.
Hello everyone, this is Andrew from Crown Academy of English.
And it will actually just play. So when I press play, my student will actually be able to do this. I can put work images here. So I have here English words for the furniture, fixtures, and fittings. So I can use image files, whether it's an image file of a worksheet, of an object, anything that I want my students to be able to access when I teach this lesson, I put on the Canvas and it will always be there. So I can go to the Canvas anytime I want. If I'm in the middle of the lesson and I need a whiteboard, all I have to do is go to the Canvas and I can scroll down to a new spot and I can start workshopping whatever and answering whatever question my student asked. I close the Canvas, I'm back to the lesson. I toggle as many times as I need. The student, and I saw a question there from the student writing. The student does not have the ability to write on the Canvas, but the student can see everything that I'm doing in real time. And the student can access the Canvas as part of the homework. So when the student does the homework later, the last slide of the homework will be a link to the Canvas. So if there are worksheets that I've put here, videos that I want the student to watch, anything that I want to do later, the student's going to be able to have access to that. So it is synced. And yeah, so we can do YouTube videos, we can do images, and those two specific things. If I go back to the classroom, I also have the homework up here. 99% of the lessons in the library have a homework assignment. And the homework is so important because not only does it allow your student to retain and progress faster, but what the homework does is the homework gives the student a chance to keep coming back to you as their teacher. So when you assign homework, the student has a reason to do something and then come back to you. So it's a great way to make sure that you continue the relationship with your student, that your students don't just fall off the face of the earth, that you never hear from them again. By continually assigning homework, it establishes that back and forth relationship. You do the lesson, you do the homework, the student comes back and you talk about it. So the homework can be assigned at the end of the lesson, but you don't have to do it that way. At any time, you can just click on this homework here, and it's going to open up this worksheet. So this worksheet is going to open up. Now, if you wanted to do this with your student, that would be the screen share kind of thing, because the student won't see the homework tab open if you wanted to do during the class. But it's there for you so that you can use that, you can do practice with. And at the end of the class, when you close the lesson, so I'm just going to show you what it looks like when I close the lesson dialog. Then I can see, would you like to send your student the homework that comes with this lesson? I can assign it to my student. I can CC another email address, and I can set a due date. And as soon as I assign this, it's going to appear on my student side.
So
And
Chris,
so I'm looking, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to go ahead, perhaps you want to go ahead and assign that, and then I can share my screen from the student side, and we can go over the asynchronous side. So Elitza had a really good point, and a lot of your students, right? They love the live lessons, they love the live interaction with their tutors, but they want a bit more. They want to know that between the live sessions with their tutors that they've got things to work on. Now, I'm sure you guys have already experienced that your students are saying, well, what do I do between this video conference lesson and the next video conference lesson? And you're probably having to scramble, like build a worksheet, build your own worksheet, find something on Dave's ESL Cafe, Google around, find something that's appropriate for the lesson you just taught, and deliver it to the student. The beauty of what Chris just showed you is you've got the live synchronous lesson, and without even thinking, when you close the classroom, we automatically ask you if you want to send the homework to the student. So I just had a lesson with my tutor, Chris. I get an email notification that Chris assigned me homework, and when I come to the platform between lessons, I've got my homework assignment waiting for me, and I've got my lesson summary waiting for me. So I get a copy of the lesson right here, down in the right, and I get the homework assignment. And this works on any internet-connected device. You don't need to worry as much about the interactivity and those elements for the homework, because it's obviously a much simpler process, the asynchronous side. So, but this is what it would look like on an iPhone, on an Android. This is what it would look like on a tablet, and this is what it looks like on a laptop. So your student is going to be learning with you and getting value from you, even though you're not teaching them. And this is really the idea of managing more students effectively with less effort. All you did was press close the classroom, and this learning experience is happening even though you didn't have to find a worksheet, you didn't have to go on the internet and source this. So you're adding that in-between class value even though you haven't actually had to do too much, which is quite powerful for the idea of taking on more students. So I'm in the homework here. This is what the student would actually work on and submit to the teacher. And this view summary button actually supports the student because it's a copy of the lesson that you taught. And, you know, it's nice that the student's able to review the materials that you taught. You can get fancy once you get really comfortable and start flipping the process. Obviously, the flipped classroom is quite trendy these days. You can send them the materials before, whatever you want. But we're just going to show you the standard way here of teacher-led synchronous lesson followed by a homework reinforcement activity and a copy of the lesson for between classes. And what I just wanted to show you is that the canvas that my teacher built actually gets included as the last slide of the lesson. So not only can you build the canvas in real time or before class, but I actually delivered the student a copy of the canvas through the lesson summary. So you could even start doing leave behinds for the students, whatever you want to do to personalize things. That last slide of the lesson canvas for the lesson summary is actually a button that opens up the canvas. So that's quite powerful. And then I, as the student, am going to work through this. I'm going to submit it to my teacher, hopefully before the next class. Almost all the homework assignments include writing. So obviously writing is a very important skill. We push a lot of the writing competency practice to the homework, to the reinforcement activity. student submits this homework to you, I'm just going to put an answer in, like, hi, Chris, this is my answer. Obviously not a great answer to this question. And I'm going to submit the homework to Chris. Hopefully this is happening before the next lesson. And Chris, my tutor, will actually get notified now that his student has submitted homework to him. And you'll get an email notification with a link in the notification that will open up the homework. But Chris will also just show you on the teaching tool where, if he needs to go in directly, where he can find that homework.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did just get an email notification, but that's not necessary. So let's take a look at how that works. So I'm going to share my screen again. So here's how I find submitted homework. I'm going to click on Student Management at the top of the screen. I'm going to find my student using the search. Okay, there's my student. I'm going to click on him. So here I am on my kind of student management page. So if I look down here, I can see the lessons that I've taught this student. And I have another column here that says homework. So the little plus sign means I've never assigned the homework. But if I have a green star means this student has completed this homework and it's now waiting for me to grade it. So I'm going to click on the star. And once I click on the star, it's going to open a new tab. And now I can see here that I've got an answer key up on the left and I've got my students' answers on the right. So some questions have a right and a wrong answer, like a multiple choice. So for the multiple choice questions, I can see that the student has marked a doctor. Well, that's in red, so I know that's wrong. The right answer is in green, a lawyer. So I've got 3 tools that I can use to give my student feedback that I can drag. I've got a check mark, I've got an X, and I've got a notepad. So the way I mark these correct and incorrect is I drag the check or the X to the question. So I'm going to drag the X here, and now I've marked number 1 wrong. And so every time my student answers a question correctly or incorrectly, I can just mark it. If I want to give additional feedback to the student, I can use the notepad. So number 1, I can drag my notepad here in addition to the X and leave it there. And now I can give Chris some feedback. So I can say, the text refers to Sarah as a lawyer, not a doctor. So any notes I give, and then I'm going to click save. Now there's a little bubble here. If I hover over the bubble, then I'm going to see the feedback that I gave the student. So I'm going to mark all of these questions, leaving feedback where it's appropriate, and I can see, okay, my student got this one right, great. So I'm going to mark the first page, and now I'm going to go to the second page. Okay, so now this is where we do some writing. Now, writing is not right or wrong. The system can't grade, well, what is right and what is wrong. This is where the notepad becomes really powerful. So if I want to give the student feedback, I can drag my notepad here. And now I can click on this button that says Input Student Answer. And if I click on this, it's going to show me the answer that my student wrote. So now I can edit this. So if my student spells something wrong, I can mark it with a strike through. I can turn it red. And then I can model the correct answer if I want. So let's turn off my strike through and I can say, the correct spelling is Chris. And now I can take my corrections and I can make it bold, I can make it green. So here, I can make edits to my students' text in real time. And now I can make other general feedback. Great overall answer. Be sure to remember whatever advice I have for the student. And I can take that and I can put that in italics so my student knows that that is my thoughts. So if I click save, now my student sees my real feedback with the red, with the bold, with the colors. So all of this stuff for my student I can provide asynchronous feedback. My student does it on their own, and then I'm able to look at what they wrote, look at their answer, say what they did right, say what they did wrong. And I can also drop the notepad to leave general feedback. So if I drop my notepad just in this box, then I can share my thoughts about the whole homework. And I can say, great job. I can give more specific feedback. You kept making a mistake on this point. Make sure to study your vocabulary ahead of the next lesson. Whatever I deem appropriate as the teacher, I type in here, my student's gonna see it. So I'm gonna click save, and then I'm going to click close the classroom. And now I'm gonna get a prompt. Do I wanna mark it as reviewed? If I mark it as reviewed, my student will be able to see my corrections. I'm going to click review. We've done that, and now I'm back to my student area, and I can see what was a green star indicating that the homework was completed and not corrected has now turned into a check mark, which means that I have now reviewed the homework. So that's kind of the start to finish of both the Canvas and how the homework works. And I see that Chris has been answering.
If you don't mind, I might now, because we're in this kind of live mode where we're showing everything, I might go back to sharing my screen. If you stop sharing, perfect. And now I'm going to show the student side. Now, again, I want to emphasize Elisa's point and my point that we're really here so that you can provide a great level of service, a great learning experience, individualized learning experience to more students at the same time using the tool. That's what we really want to instill today. So I had my class with Chris. We did day at the office speaking activity. It was a great live session. Then he assigned the homework to me. I did the homework. I had a copy of the lesson. I had a copy of Chris's awesome Canvas as the last slide of the lesson. And now I got another notification that my awesome tutor, Chris, also reviewed my homework. You saw that took Chris about 30 seconds, a couple minutes, right, of his time to add a little personal touch to the homework. I now got a notification that my tutor cares so much about me and so much about my learning that he actually reviewed my homework before our next class, right? So now I'm going to open up that piece of homework. It's sitting down here in my recently completed homework list, but I'll also have gotten an email notification with a link that I can directly use, but just in case the student's logging in, and I can go in, and now I can see Chris has released the answer notation to me. So I've got that green and orange notation on top of my answers because he marked it as reviewed. But more importantly, I've got Chris's personal comments to me. I've got the general comment he left on my homework, shows up as a sticky. And on the sentence correction, here's Chris's comment. So this is really powerful, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't always want to be having first lessons with students every week, always having to build up our pipeline of new students. Once we convince a student that we're the right tutor for them, we want them to stick around, right? We don't want to always have to be selling ourselves as teachers. So this loop, right, of the live lesson, automatically send the homework, review the homework, leave your comments. You could imagine that, and I'm sure many of you are already doing this, it's just probably quite laborious. But that loop, right, that really does keep students stuck on you as a tutor. And, you know, hopefully keeps your retention up and reduces the need for you to constantly be having first lessons with new students. And that's you know, if we can do that for you using this tool and make it easier for you to do that, that would be a big achievement for us. So I'll pass the screen sharing back over to Chris.
Yeah, both of the Chris's, just a quick note here. I completely agree with both of you that, you know, putting the extra mile and helping your student further their process into the learning journey is what actually will make them retain in long term. And I understand that a lot of our tutors, they're so busy. Probably you're looking at this and thinking, oh my gosh, Chris, do you know my schedule for tomorrow? I have 10 classes back to back. how am I supposed to provide such a big feedback to each of my students every time? And to be honest with you, you don't need to comment on every single section if you don't have time to. You can provide general feedback, review the homework, and actually in the next class, why don't you discuss it with the students? Start with the homework first, right? Be creative, come up with creative ways of how you can engage the students if you don't have time to really spend 15, 20 minutes on their homework. If you do, that's awesome. If you don't, be creative. Start next lesson. Say, did you see I reviewed your homework? Here is a couple of things. Let's discuss them. Let's improve them. And I'm sure that the student would really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And even though we're talking about adding a lot of value to your student, we should reinforce that it's only a couple clicks, right? You could, if you're completely pressed for time, you could just open up the homework, close the homework, and mark it as reviewed. Your student will still get a notification that you've reviewed the homework. They'll still, for all the auto-graded answers, they'll still get the answer key. And they'll even though you only did a couple clicks, they'll get that feeling that you're with them on their journey between classes. Yeah, so that's a really important point. Someone mentioned, do we have other languages? That's actually a point we wanted to point out, like Turkish, French. Right now, this is only English as a second language. So for your students that are learning all the other languages of the world, you wouldn't bring them onto this tool, onto the methodology tool. This is only for your English students. So that's a good point. So you would still continue to do all the great work you're already doing for your other language students. So Chris, I was wondering, like, could you, so the Preply methodology, really the start of the document, Chris, if you share your screen and show the start of the document, it goes into very detailed, the placement test, how you set up for your first lesson with a new student. But what I want Chris to show us now is, okay, maybe scroll down a little bit. So part 2 of the Preply methodology, after we set up your Zoom link, is all about assigning the placement test. And once your student completes the placement test, how you set up for your first lesson.
Yeah.
But one thing I want Chris to show, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on this, is that in the library, you can also approach the lesson library for your existing students once you learn about them in a hop-on, hop-off method. You've got almost 750 lessons available to you here, covering all sorts of topics. And the blue filters at the top, the level filters, you can filter the library by the level of your student. So generally, this would be a student, you've already done the placement test, you've already done the first lesson, and you want to get into like a more creative, you know what's best. You're the tutor, you're the one who has the relationship. You can use the level filters here to filter our library. So if Chris just selects upper intermediate, now we're only reflecting the upper intermediate lessons back to you in each category. So you got a huge library of speaking activities, reading activities, single skill grammar lessons, functional language, idioms. So if you open up the speaking activities, Chris, all sorts of topic-based lessons. There's only so many grammar lessons that one student can take in a row, right? Like it's good to drill kind of technical language ability, but look at all these different topics that you can explore. And, you know, before your lesson, let's say you're all busy, you only have 15 minutes to prepare for your lesson. 15 minutes on this methodology can be a reasonable amount of time to pick a lesson, right? Because you can scroll the different lesson categories. You can even use the search bar. And then when you launch this lesson, let's say you launch one of the speaking activities, Chris, you don't need to enroll a student in the lesson when you're just browsing it. So you just click I'm just browsing, that green button, and now you can review the lesson, you can look at the teacher notes, you can get an idea of the flow, you can decide based on your students' needs whether this is going to be a good fit. And now you're only 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away from the lesson starting, from your agreed time with your student. You can enroll the student from within the classroom. The bottom enroll student button there, you've already launched a class, but you can actually enroll your student from within here. So you enroll your student, you know your student is enrolled, you know they're gonna have that join lesson button when they log in to the tool. I can even share my screen now to show you again the student side. So, as a recap, it was like 10, 15, 20 minutes before the lesson. He picked a lesson that he thought was gonna be appropriate. He enrolled me into it. And because Chris enrolled me into the lesson, even from within the lesson, I go to the tool at our agreed time, and I've got my join lesson button waiting for me. I press join lesson, and I'm in the lesson. I'm on the slide that Chris is currently on. I've got my start video button. Chris has a start video button. We press start video, we're ready to go. Like, we really just wanted to show you that you can use this we're here to make you look good. We're not here to prescribe everything to you. We're giving you 750 lessons. You are the tutor. You know your student best, especially after a couple sessions with them. Feel free to get creative. Pick a lesson that you think is going to work. Browse the lessons. Use that green I'm just browsing button between lessons and get a sense of what's going to be good for your students at the end of the day.
Yeah, great point. And I hope that you guys found all of this information helpful, and hopefully it answered a lot of your questions about, oh my gosh, I have a lesson in 10 minutes. How do I start it? What does the student see? So now you were able at the same time to see both what the student and tutor are both seeing at the same time. So hopefully this answered a lot of your questions and doubts and made you a bit more curious to explore the resources that are available to you with one click. And honestly, if you get a student for the first time, as our methodology says, you don't really know, what they're looking to do, what their level is. This actually program builds you, the way of how you can handle that situation. What you do is you send the student a placement test. You don't know, what their level is. You don't know, what their current grammar, listening, speaking, reading, writing level is. So you have no idea what to do with them. You don't need to panic. All you need to do is send them a quick email and telling them that you will be sending the placement test that will assess their level. And regardless of whether they're learning because they want to improve their speaking or they're learning for a different reason, this placement test will help you understand where these students are not, what's the gap between what students currently feel comfortable with and what they need to learn. And the best part about the placement test is that it gives you the gap analysis with a pre-made learning plan. And I'm sure that the Chris will actually go into that right now and will show you how to actually, send the placement test to the student. The second you get them, the second somebody books a lesson, they're so excited to start learning. This is the moment where you can actually make a difference and send them the placement test, explain to them what they will get out of it, and get them excited to start learning with you.
Great. Chris, do you want to go ahead with that? I know that some people have to leave because we've gone a little bit over time. So how do you guys think about showing the placement test process for the first time you're working with a student? Chris can send it to me. We can pretend it's our first time together. And then opening up a result and kind of going from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'll walk through what that looks like. So I'm going to turn on my screen. Okay. So when I'm getting ready to interact with a student for the first time, all I need is their email address. So if I look at my sheet here, I can see that I can find the student's email on Preply's My Requests page. And if I can't see that, I can contact the student or Preply's support team. Okay, so all I need is the student's email address. Once I have that, I've got everything I need to assign the placement test. So here's how to do it. Under my teacher tab, I can just click on placement test. So I'm gonna click on that. It's gonna open up a new page. And I'm going to click on assign test. And it's gonna ask me who's going to do it. Well, if I've never taught this student before, it's not an existing student, it's a prospective student. So I'm gonna click the green button for prospective student. Now I'm gonna type the student's nickname. So this is going to be Chris, my new student. This is what they're going to be listed as on your profile. And I'm gonna type their email address. The email address ultimately is not that important. The email address is only what they're gonna need to log in. So if I have the student's email address, I can put that in. So it's gonna be Chris, my new student, at mail.com. I'm gonna give the student a password. So I'm gonna type English 123, English 123. I'm gonna leave the student language interface as English unless I happen to know that my student has a low level of English and I also know what the student's native language is. Now on this send a copy of login credentials, this is gonna ask me if the system is going to send an email to the student. I can just leave it at no, because in my methodology here, we can send the student a reminder of what they need, okay? So I can just click this, I can leave this at no. I'm gonna add my student. So it's adding my student, and now it's going to ask me what parts of the placement test I want to send. So for each section, I see that the grammar is selected. They have to take the grammar test. That's the only one that's mandatory. If I wanna learn about the test, I can read about it. So I can just take a look here. I see that I've got grammar, I've got listening, reading, writing, speaking.
And
so,
generally we'd recommend, if you're not too comfortable or you don't have a lot of experience with the placement test, grammar, listening, and reading will give you plenty of information on the student. And if you don't know much about the student, you don't necessarily want to over encumber them with too much of a test. So just to play it safe, we'd go with grammar, listening, and reading as a default. And we include that in the Preply methodology document.
Yeah, so I can select these and then I'll send it to Chris. And it's just gonna tell me that once I click this, I'm not gonna be able to assign any of the other sections. Okay, I'm gonna send the test. And now I see the placement test has been sent to Chris, my new student. So,
okay. So Chris, maybe I should screen share on the student side.
Yeah.
So
well, one thing before you do that, one thing I want to highlight is that someone's phone is ringing. One thing I want to highlight is that sometimes if we don't know, if I say, gosh, I don't know if my student has access or not, I can always see what my student sees. So if I click on student management, I can go to Chris, my new student, and here's his page. I can log in as this student to see what this student sees, which is always a great step for troubleshooting. So if I click login as your student, I see that the moment Chris, my new student, logs in, he's got a big link that says start the placement test. So I know that if he says I didn't get the email or whatever, it doesn't matter. I can have the student log in and they're gonna see that. And I'll go back to my account and stop sharing my screen.
Oh, actually, no, that's okay. I think that answered it. So the login as your student functionality that Chris just showed you, that's a great tool. So Chris, if you press the go back to your account up top, oh, you're logged in as an admin, unfortunately. So basically, all Chris had to do, Chris, I'll start sharing my screen to show that again, because that's a really important point, is that there's always going to be situations, right, where you're dealing with two sides of a tool. There's your side and then there's the student side. There's always going to be situations where, especially at the start, where the student says like, hey teacher, I didn't get that email notification, or how do I open that lesson summary, or you didn't send me that homework, or what have you. But we've got a great tool built into the tool for that. So you can basically use our login as your student button. So when you go to student management, you're going to see all your students. And you click on the one in question. In this case, it was my student Jose who was having issues. And under his face, I see login as your student. I press login as your student, and I'm taken into his lesson, into his environment. And I can be like, Jose, what are you talking about? You've got G1.8 homework waiting for you right there and there, right then and there. Like, you know, just log in. It's waiting for you. It's the first homework on your lesson list. So that login as your student button can really be a great troubleshooting tool. And actually, it should be your default go-to. If a student is having any issues on their side of the platform, use the login as your student button. Take a peek at what they're seeing before you go ahead and answer any questions. Okay, Chris.
Alita's muted.
Great. Sorry about that. I'm trying to talk and mute myself at the same time. And guys, I am so sorry. We got so excited about talking to you about how to use the methodology that the time flew by. And I'm looking at my clock, and it looks like it's 6:09 at my time, meaning 11:09 Eastern time. So we are a bit over, and I know that we shared a lot of information. And I think that probably, Chris, if there are a few other tips you want to share, and then we can wrap up and continue on Friday at the same time. Hopefully now you're excited to join us and continue this conversation, and you find it helpful. And I would like to first ask Chris and Chris if they want to wrap up, and then I will add 2 sentences, and then in a couple of minutes we'll let you know. I'm sure you have plenty of students there.
Yeah, that's great. I think we should wrap up. We went over a lot. And I think what we'll do is on Friday, we'll start the session with just reviewing the placement test, because that was a little bit rushed in today's session. So we'll just do the placement test and just do the first lesson. And then we'll continue from there.
That sounds perfect. And on my side, when we talk about the teaching guide, everything we discussed today, from starting with a new student, you get this exciting news. Somebody booked a lesson with you. You're about to jump up and down and be excited. And then you're like, okay, what do I do with them now? We actually have put this teaching guide for you, literally what to do before the first lesson, how to prepare for it, what to do during the first lesson. We even broke down kind of the steps, like how to do the agenda and all of these really fun things to help you not be alone when you get this student, to help you guide you through it. So anytime you get a new student, look through it, remember it, take some parts and customize others. I'm sure you're an amazing tutor and you want to bring your personality to this as well. But we highly recommend you to, if you haven't checked to really review this guide. Also what to do after the first lesson, how to make sure this student stays engaged and buys a package with you after this lesson and continues learning with you, that you're their tutor of choice. It does walk you through that. And the second thing that actually Chris shared a couple of times is the how-to tips and tricks. This is actually how-to guide to use the methodology, to use the program. So this is kind of a short version of the webinar, pretty much, of everything from, hey, how to get started, how the placement test, the standard lesson library, all walks you through the whole part of the learning platform and answers a lot of the questions. I will send these two attachments that I just shared with you, these 2 documents that I just shared with you to an email to all of you, so you can have them handy. But again, anytime you get a new student, teaching guide, what to do, send the placement test, prepare for the lesson, send the homework, and then if you forget, okay, how do I do the homework again? We have put this how-to guide to be handy next to you. Both awesome Chris's are not available, or myself, you have a secret guide next to you to help you with that. So without further ado, I think we were able to answer a lot of the questions that you had. Happy to hear a few more. But again, the reason why we're asking you to send the homework to actually start with the placement test, to conduct the lesson on the learning platform, and then send the homework, is that what we see, quick numbers to share with you guys, tutors that actually send the placement test, get the placement test results from the student, and use the platform for their very first lesson, and send a homework. All these 3 steps to a new student, actually students tend to make twice more revenue from this student than they would do otherwise. So what that means is that you are going to have twice more engaged student, you're going to have twice more money for yourself and your family, and there's no reason why you would skip all of these steps, because it's proven, it works. We have the data, we see it from tutors that use it on a daily basis. So we would like to encourage you to try and use it and see the results yourself.
Okay, I think that's a great outro, Elitsa. We're really looking forward to meeting you all again on Friday at the same time.
Yeah, and before I hang up, just if anyone has some super urgent question that we were not able to answer, we skipped because I know we were answering as we were going. Any questions, please unmute yourself, address the question. We have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer the questions. Otherwise, please send them my way at elitsa@preply.com. That is ELITSA@preply.com. I will review them and try my best to answer them for you.
Oh, and Lumine just asked about the recording. Elitsa is going to send you the recording after today's session. So you'll get that with the link to the Preply methodology worksheet.
Yep, I will go ahead and send all of that information to you guys. The recording, hopefully I'll review the recording. Hopefully it sounds as better as we think and it's as good as we believe. We'll send the recording, we'll send the teaching guide so you have it handy. We'll send again the how-to guide to help you answer all of those questions. I think we are looking forward to continuing this on Friday. So thank you very much. Best of luck and happy teaching on Preply.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.